For today's cup of coffee, I'm having to ride solo this evening. Youngest kid has been doing laundries down at my mother's for hours. I didn't think we owned that much clothing, so I'm going to miss his commentary greatly. I have cats, but they don't say much during these things. They're just like, yeah, whatever. Today's subject is about Albert Coe, Zret, and the Norcans, and not the Norcans. So Norcan has actually been in the news today. Not sure if you're familiar with that. But this is from Vicky Verma, and he had written this September the 21st of 2021 on the website How and Why's, and it is the bizarre UFO story of Albert Coe and the meeting with the descendants of ancient aliens in 1920. And I am going to edit. I'm not going to read it verbatim because Mr. Verma, he does an okay job with the writing, but ever so often he needs to do a little more proofreading. Anyhow, Albert Coe's story came out in the late 1960s, but his encounter actually dated back to the middle of 1920, and he was 16 years old at the time, and he had this bizarre encounter with a stranger that later turned out to be a visitor from another planet, according to the stranger and Mr. Coe. And his case is also mentioned by UFO researcher Timothy Good in his book titled Alien Base, The Evidence for Extraterrestrial Colonization of Earth, and that was published in 1998. Now, Coe's story supports the ancient astronaut theory. Of course, several of them do. It's not like they just came up with all that on their own. And this is what supposedly happened. In June of 1920, Coe was on holiday with his family, and then he decided to go on a trip by himself and explore the mountains and the banks of Mattawa River in Ontario. And after exploring the river, he was going to meet with his family and then go canoeing. And he was having a great time there by himself on the riverbank when he heard a voice screaming for help. And he looked around, but he couldn't see anyone. So he started walking towards the direction of the voice. And soon he found a cleft, which measured about 5 foot wide and was situated diagonally in the direction of the river. And as he went further along, he found a blonde stranger who was trapped in the narrow crack that was around 2.5 feet below the surface. And the man was severely injured, and he only had one arm free. So Coe could not lift this gentleman by using just his hands, so he decided to use his ropes and other equipment that he had to pull the man up. He was successful in freeing the stranger, and so got him back safely up on the ground. The stranger had a wounded leg, and he was unable to walk. And he asked Coe if he had some water. And Coe was kind enough that he actually used his hat to scoop some water out of the river and give to the stranger. He also bandaged the stranger's wounds with his own handkerchief. So Coe was a good kid. And while Coe was helping the blonde man, he noticed that there was something peculiar about him. And Coe wrote in his self-published book, The Shocking Truth, from 1969, and I do believe that that is a PDF that I have found, and I can include that link in the description box. And so you can go and read that for yourself. I've just read through a few pages of it, but I haven't had a chance to really sit down and read the whole thing. But Coe said that the man was wearing an odd silver gray tight jumper type garment, and Las Vegas comes to mind for some reason, and it had a leathery feel without a belt or visible fasteners attached, but was just under the chest there was a small instrument panel. And so Coe asked the stranger who he was and what he had been doing there. And the man replied that he had come there for some fishing in his plane that was parked nearby. And Coe did notice that there was a fishing rod and some other equipment which helped to support the man's story about fishing. And so the stranger was able to walk some after they had talked for a little while, and he thanked Coe, and he was going to go to his plane. And Coe wanted to help the man walk to his plane, but the stranger found it was a bit uncomfortable for whatever reason, and he told Coe, he's like, no, I'm good, I got this. But after he started trying to walk, he realized he did not have it, and he did have to have Coe's help. So Coe helped him, and reaching the plane, the stranger asked him to make a promise that he would never reveal anything to anyone about their meeting and about the things that he was going to see. Coe agreed, and then the stranger showed him his plane, and the stranger told him that it had been built by his father. Coe described it as a round silver disc about 20 feet in diameter, and it was standing on 3 legs in the form of a tripod without propeller, engine, wings, or fuselage, end quote. Also, the craft had no winder. I went Southwest Virginia on that. And the craft had no window, so Coe wondered how anybody could steer or navigate a craft when they couldn't see. The stranger explained that the craft was at the experimental stage and was highly secret, but that he was allowed to use it occasionally. On the underside of the craft, which was no more than 4 feet from the ground, there were 3 separated compartments, and these were later revealed when the stranger pressed a button that released a short ladder. Coe assisted him onto the ladder, and then when told to do so, gave him a push upwards and into the vehicle. So I guess he yeeted him. The stranger thanked Coe for his assistance and promised that he would meet him again in the future. Coe was instructed to step away from the craft during the liftoff, which he did. Coe described the following. At first, it gave off a low whistling sound, picked up speed, mounting to a high-pitched whine, finally going above the audible capabilities of the ear. At that time, I experienced a throbbing sensation that was felt rather than heard. It seemed to compress me within myself. As it lifted a few feet above the ground, it paused with a slight fluttering. The legs folded into the recesses as it swiftly rose with the effortless ease of thistledown caught in an updraft of air, and then it was gone. End quote. I don't know why everybody determines they have to be poetic on writing some of these things. Now, Coe was confused after seeing all this because it just, went against his paradigm. In 6 months, he met the mysterious man again after receiving a note that was requesting a meeting with someone named, it's Xretsim, so that would be Zret, at the McAlpine Hotel. What's the difference between a hotel and a motel? In Ottawa. And so Coe wondered if it was the same man, and indeed it was the same man. And when they shook hands, Coe felt a strange sensation that came from a small device the stranger was carrying him. So I'm like, okay, was it in the hand that he shook with Coe, or where was he carrying it? Coe later explained to Dr. Berthold Schwartz that the device registered vibrational frequency of his body and the data from which could be shown on a television-like screen elsewhere. According to him, the frequency was on the database. Every move was being monitored. So he was a little ahead of today's time. Coe said, they did this to make sure I would keep my promise. So, during the second meeting, Coe found out that the man's name was Zret, and that was Z-R-E-T. He had numerous questions, but Zret told him that he would tell him everything at a following meeting. However, he didn't. He told Coe that it would be several months before he would see him again, and then the following year they met in May, and this continued for the next 5 decades. So it was a pretty lengthy relationship there. Ultimately, Zret revealed everything to Coe that was about him and the situation. Zret claimed to belong to a small group of extraterrestrial beings who came to observe humans' scientific advances. And for the, as close as he could explain for Earthlings, he was pursuing a career in electronic engineering. And he said that the history of his people dated back for thousands of years. But this particular mission began in 1904 when 100 people, such as himself, infiltrated every major nation of the planet as small groups of technicians to observe and evaluate. And that was supposed to be evaluating humanity's advancement. Zret supposedly said in Earth's time standard that he was exactly 304 years older than Coe, and said that this reversal of youth was a vital requirement to establish their identity as Earthlings for the foundation block in the fulfillment of their mission here, and that was dependent upon being accepted by all the various races as being one of our own. Zret told Coe that that when he had fallen in the cravat there, the panel on his chest got broken and that he could not send signals to his base for help. Also, in further meetings, Coe learned in detail that Zret's civilization had come from a planet called Norca, which orbited Tau Ceti, situated at a distance of 12 light years from the solar system. Now, the planet supposedly stopped supporting life around 14,000 years prior, so they began exploring other habitable planets, and fortunately they did find them in the solar system. During their visit, they met with Cro-Magnon humans, and they also established bases on Venus and Mars. It says that they evacuated from their planet using 62 huge carrier ships that could carry thousands of Norcans to their new home. So it makes you wonder what size was their planet, how many were there, since they were talking about thousands instead of millions or billions. So you got to wonder on some of that. Says that the journey was disastrous as they lost several ships, killing thousands, and that some remained crash-landed on Mars. Okay, if they were that advanced, you would sort of think that they were able to pilot these ships a little bit better. It says that they had spent thousands of years on Mars and managed to survive in the harsh environment of the red planet. And as they progressed, they sent 2 ships out for better terrain, one to study Venus's atmosphere, and then the other to carry others to Earth. Okay, where did they get the different materials that they would need to repair different things and survive on Mars? So it's always good to have healthy skepticism when you're listening to some of these encounters. According to Coe, humans on Earth were all dark-haired and dark-eyed, and the mutations occurred when the Norcans started interbreeding with these people, and then you had people with blue or green eyes, and then other complexions appeared. Interesting, the locations offered to their settlements and the alleged point in time of when they occurred would lead some people to draw the connections that this led to legends of Atlantis. So, I can see that. Zret stated that there is still a Norcan base on Venus and that they are still regularly conducting experiments on Mars due to its thin atmosphere, which makes it an ideal laboratory. So Coe never uttered a word about his meeting with Zret until the late 1950s. He finally told his wife, and she found that rather hard to believe at first. And while there's no way to prove Coe's story is true, it should be noted that he never took any monetary help from telling his story. All he did, he wrote this little self-published book about his experience. So that speaks something, because most people, they would be out doing the talk show and all the radio shows and everything else. And while Coe's encounter is interesting, any encounter is interesting. This one is still one of the most intriguing and widely known to UFO researchers. Now, that could be because that it occurred in 1920 and that he did wait that long to disclose whatever, about it. So, yeah, you make up your own mind on whether this is or whether this isn't And yeah, cats, though, 'cause I told you they don't say much. So let me know in the comments what you think about Mr. Coe, his story about Zret and the Norcans, all those things. If you've had experiences with the supernatural and paranormal, encounters with UFOs, aliens, cryptids, you know, if you've had, like I said, any kind of experience with any of those things, would love to hear those. If you have myths, family legends, regional legends, any of those things, send me an email, cupofcoffeewithscream@gmail.com. And I appreciate you very much for having coffee with me today. Know that you are very loved and that we will see you all on the next cup. Bye.